Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of the Perception Diet, and today we are going to cover part 1 of 2 of why following your bliss is not so easy. Okay, so in this part, basically I'm going to go over why following your bliss and finding your passion and figuring out who you are and living a life that feels amazing and abundant and perfect for you is such a challenge in the world today. And so that you can feel a little bit of clarity on why you can't just follow your bliss or find your thing, or why it seems to be so complicated. And then in the next video, I'm going to cover what you can do practically to help you move in the direction of living a life that is blissful for you, of following your bliss, of figuring out what is your bliss. Because again, like once you kind of understand the mechanics of it, those tools will make sense, right? But without understanding the mechanics, the tools will seem kind of random. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so we've all heard that saying, right? Follow your bliss, do what makes you happy, do what feels good. And for most of us on this planet, that saying sounds really great and sounds really awesome, and in theory sounds like it should make a lot of sense, but in practice doesn't work out so well, okay? Most of us, when we hear the idea of follow your bliss, we think, well, I have all these conflicting ideas. I have all these conflicting thoughts. I have all these conflicting blisses, right? So for instance, like one little thing, like part of me really wants to be healthy, but part of me really loves cookies and cupcakes. So is it following my bliss to try, like to not eat the cookies and cupcakes and try and get healthy? Or is it following my bliss to let myself eat the cupcakes and cookies even though they don't actually make me feel very good, right? And so that's like a simple little example where, like, in the large scheme, the large part of this is more like, what do you want to do here with your life? What do you want to be? Who are you as a person, as a being, and what did you come here to do, right? So to look at this and understand why following your bliss is such a difficult thing, we first need to understand that we human beings, right? All the different types of human beings that exist on this planet are wired for connection. Now, you've heard this before, right? You want connection. You want to feel connected. But let's break this down a little bit more so that this makes even more sense, okay? There is a fundamental natural law that states that we are all connected, okay? That fundamentally speaking, the truth is there is no separation between the being that is you and everything else, okay? That literally the stuff that makes up what you are is in a continual communication with the stuff of everything else. Literally, this universe that we live in is just a continual exchange of energy. It's a continual cycling through of energies and emotions and feelings and thoughts and all of these things, right? And when we come into the body, right, we come into this 3D human experience, there are stipulations that we step into, okay? Meaning you step into a body that looks and feels like it is solid and like it is separate from everything else, right? You come into an ego, a personality, and again, that really feels and looks separate and individual and like one in a sea of many, right? And what we need to know here is that the very first and fundamental absolute truth that is absolutely true is that you are perpetually connected to everything, okay? So literally, what we seek as beings on this planet is to remember that connection and to feel that connection, okay? So, like I'm saying here, the connection never actually went anywhere. You are fundamentally one with all, and all with everything. There is no separation, okay? But like I say, the stipulation of stepping into a human experience requires a certain filter that gives you a perspective of an individual so that you may have your individual experience, okay? So again, these two things may sound opposite. They sound polar, right? On the one hand, we have the truth of connection, one with all, and on the other hand, we have this idea that we are meant to be here in an ego for a reason, to have a personal experience, okay? And so if we were a little bit more conscious, okay? If we were to allow ourselves to expand our perception and our perspective, right? Which is happening for most people. You can live in a state where you simultaneously are completely aware of your connection, okay? Like literally, you receive energy from the air around you. You receive energy from the prana of the universe. You receive transmission from the sun. You can swim in the ocean and be powered up. You can feel completely connected to the people around you, whether they're physically there or not, okay? Telepathy, these things will start to happen to you, okay? While you exist in your physical experience, okay? These two things do not need to be independently happening, okay? That's duality thinking, and we're moving beyond that, right? So when people reach a state of Christ consciousness or God realization or enlightenment, so much of that is the understanding that this little I that you are is important and wonderful and beautiful and awesome and here to express and do exactly what you're here to do. But at the same time, that it is an illusion ultimately, right? That the separation part is the illusion, and then that never occurred. And so that desperate longing that you feel to get reconnected goes away because you feel it, okay? So we are a society that craves connection. Now, because of the way that our consciousness has shifted over the human race, we have, for a large part, completely forgotten our connection, okay? So that's why I say most of us live in this world where we feel desperately alone. Really, if we get down to it, people are hurting, okay? Really, most people, and this may be you included, are hurting because you feel separated. You feel alone. You are afraid that it might be true, that you are all alone here, right? That people don't get you, that people don't see you. You can't feel a connection to anything higher than yourself. Maybe you can't even feel a connection to your highest self. You feel like this right here in the body is all there is. And ultimately, that is the most painful false belief that the human can experience. And this is the truth, okay? When we as a human race believe we are alone, believe we are separated, believe that we cannot feel that connection we want to feel all the time while still being in our personal experience, that is where the most pain happens, okay? That is ultimately the greatest cause of suffering on this planet, is the feeling of isolation, all right? And so when the human consciousness on a mass scale started to lose, so now remember, back, the human consciousness was aware of its connection, okay? And we still see pieces of this in indigenous cultures that haven't been touched by the Western world, okay? Their connection to the spirit realm, their connection to each other. There are tribes that literally communicate telepathically. They know how to think to each other, okay? So we, in our history, have been societies that knew of this connection and lived in the truth of no separation, all right? And now, as we have forgotten, we have descended more and more and more into fear, right? And I think that that's a pretty obvious thing to look around now. Look at our world now. And again, this is no judgment on society. It's just an observation. We are a society who are crippled by fear, right? Everything that we do and everything that we are is completely inharmonious, right? We're at war all the time. There's always an other to fight against. We are at war with the earth. We are at war with ourselves. We are in a perpetual state of anxiety and depression and suppression and fear. We are locked down. We feel alone. And this alone feeling, this belief in the fact that we are alone, that we are isolated, that we are the only one, perpetuates pretty much every horrible thing that happens on this planet, right? When the human being believes that they are isolated, right? They either turn into a kind of tyrant, right? Like I'm just going to be out for myself. I'm going to do what I need to do for myself. I'm going to drill the oil. I'm going to shit on all the people. It doesn't really matter because we're not connected. It's just me, and everyone else is a them, including the earth that I live on, and I'm just going to get what's mine, and I'm going to do my thing, right? Or we kind of go the other way, and we become completely depressed and riddled with anxiety and turned in on ourselves, hating ourselves, okay? So again, we've lost over time this connection. And now, kind of the only last threads of it that we sort of see in society here now are this idea of connection to your culture, okay? So the last threads of connection that are kind of like quote-unquote taught in our society, because we have forgotten so much, all these other elements and layers of connection, is the connection to the culture, okay? So because connection to culture is essentially all that we're taught, right? Have friends that love you, have family that loves you, have coworkers that love you, make sure you fit in to society and you'll feel better. We have created, again, this crazy society where fitting in is the most important thing that we can do because it's the closest thing we have to feeling like we are connected, right? So we're trained from the very beginning. So again, you can watch my Emotional Mastery series. I'll put the link to the playlist down below. We are trained from the very beginning. What is appropriate for your family? What is appropriate for the culture that you live in? To do, to say, to be, right? To express. And, right? So because we are this culture that now says the only source of connection that is possible, right? The only thing that's going to save you from the hollow, aching, crushing feeling of being absolutely alone is fitting in to society. And when we look at our society that is profoundly unwell, profoundly sick, profoundly in fear, to fit into this society is automatically going to require that you are suppressing and denying your true self. Okay, now, the reason we need to understand that is because a culture that exists like the one that we have, that is perpetually in fear, right? That is all about get for yourself, get rich, get money, get stuff, get status so that other people will approve of you, right? Do the right thing so that other people will approve of you. Do the right job so that other people will approve of you. That's how we get connection, right? And the way that our society functions right now is fully based on fear, fully based on separation, fully based on war, and like I say, right, it's this crazy dichotomy of because we are so disconnected, we are completely at war with ourselves and with everything around us. And the way that we try and get connected is to fit into that society that's at war with itself and everything around it. Okay, you see how this is kind of crazy? So we learn from a very young age that for most of us, to be my natural self, to do what feels good for me, to be who I am, is going to get me rejected, right? Because that's what a society in fear is like. A society in fear wants homogeny. A society in fear wants predictability. A society in fear wants to know exactly what's going on, no deviation from the rule. This is how we're doing it. This is what we do. Don't look at anything. Don't rock the boat, don't be different, don't be unique, don't do any of those things because we're scared, we don't know that. Everything needs to be predictable. So you need to fit the mold, you need to do the thing, and if you don't, you are rejected because we're afraid. Remember what happens to a cell in fear? It cannot grow, change, evolve. It needs the status quo. Your lizard brain, when you're in fear, wants the status quo. Society at large wants the status quo, right? So we have a society built on factory work. We have a society built on just put your head down, do what you're supposed to do, make money, be a productive member of society, don't say too much, don't do too much, entertain us if you will, but these are the parameters, these are the parameters, these are parameters. And we need to understand that ultimately speaking, each individual is an individual that came with special gifts. You're not predictable, you are unique. You are meant to be a completely different thing than everybody else and anything else in the entire thing, because that is the point of this life, is all the experiences, every potentiality. We're not meant to be a carbon copy of anything, ever. We are meant to be unique. So you see how this starts to create a fraction in our consciousness. Because you are fundamentally unique, you are not going to fit society. Because society wants homogeny. When it's in a state of fear, it wants homogeny. When you are authentic, you are different. So now, you start to have this feeling of you've forgotten how to connect. You've forgotten how to feel connected. Social connection is the only form of connection you know and that is taught to you. The only way to fit in is to fit in. The only way to get any amount of connection is to be like everyone else. Yet, your guidance system, right, what would actually bring you joy and bliss, which would be to follow what is natural for you, which is going to be unique. And so what happens is you start to turn in on yourself. You start to hate every unique part of you because it's the part of you that's getting you rejected from the all. You see what I'm saying here? And now the more you reject yourself, the more you hate yourself, the more you don't like who you are, the further and further and further away you're going to get from being able to live a life of your bliss, because you're literally suppressing all of the things that would make you feel blissful because you're afraid to express those things because you know it's going to lead to you getting rejected. So you're in a constant battle with wanting to be connected and wanting to be yourself. And so now, the more you fight with who you are, the more you hate yourself, the more you do not like who you are, the more you have decided this is not okay about me, this is not okay about me, this is not okay, because all these people rejected all of that about me, the further you get away from being able to even know what would be a life that leads you bliss, right? And again, unfortunately, the other thing that this does is the more you reject yourself, the more you suppress yourself, the more you say, no, that's not okay, that's not okay, that's not okay, the less you are able to feel your connection, which is the thing you're trying to get from suppressing yourself. Okay? And that's what's so crazy about this. Connection is possible without social connection. The more you suppress who you are, the farther you get away from the unique aspect that you are, the unique perspective, the one that's only ever going to be exactly how you are, right? Which will be your bliss. And the farther you get away from loving that and expressing that and doing that, the less you will feel connected. And you're doing it, you're sacrificing yourself, you're throwing yourself away because you feel that if you express who you really are, you're going to lose the only connection you have, which is social connection. And so you turn to drugs, you turn to self-sabotaging behavior, you turn to alcohol, you turn to food, you turn to all of these things to try and get a little bit of that connection. You turn to horrible relationships to try and get a little bit of that connection. Anytime you do anything that would be authentic, you hate yourself for doing it. And that is why following your bliss is so hard. Because you want connection, and you believe the only way to get connected is to be socially acceptable. And in our society, you cannot be a unique individual and be accepted. And you are a unique individual. So that's why it's so complicated. All right? So just think about that. In the next video, we'll talk about tools that you can use to actually get connected so that you can start to find the life of your bliss. So look at all the links down below, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff, join Patreon, find me on Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.